an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up.
Welcome, Bill Morris. You're one of our commissioner candidates for District 2, and really pleased to have you on to hear about yourself and what you're going to do for the district and why you think that you're the best candidate. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to go ahead and introduce yourself to the county.
Well, thank you, Jesse. I appreciate this opportunity tonight. A little bit about me. I'm Bill Morris. I am a retired law enforcement officer. I retired as the chief of police in Irwin after spending 10 years there and 20 years with the Harnett County Sheriff's Office. I'm also veteran of the United States Army. I've worked here in the community and lived here in the community my whole career. My wife is a retired school teacher who's gone back to work at Cape Fear Christian Academy. I'm a small business owner. I'm in the home inspection, septic inspection, and I'm a contract inspector with the Veterans Administration for our custom adaptive housing program for our men and women who have had some permanent injuries from their time in combat, and we try to look after them. So that's a little bit about me. Of course, I'll be glad to. I'm on my wife's on the Central Carolina Community College Board, and I'm on the Home Inspection Licensure Board, as well as the charter school. I spent 8 years on the Board of Education, 4 of which I was chairman, and I'm happy to say that we took every dollar we could and funneled it back towards the classroom. And I'm sure we'll get into that in a little more in a few minutes, but that's pretty much an introduction on myself.
Well, I appreciate it. So before we go ahead and get started into this next section, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show everyone just exactly what we're even talking about here. So here is a Google search. I'm just going to go ahead and do Harnett County District Map 2022. And here's our first option that comes up. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this map and zoom in here just a touch. So this is obviously, this is our county here, and these are our districts. And I wanted everyone to see how I'm able to pull these maps up so they can look them up themselves and get more into detail with it. But with that said, I'd like to go ahead and start off by just defining what a county commissioner even is. So if you could start us off with kind of like a 4th grade level explanation, and then we'll work into some details of what the job description entails.
Well, the county commissioner has to be an advocate for the people that live in his or her district. You have to be a point of access for them with their needs of the government. And you also have to represent their opinions because there's a lot of folks that feel that government's too big. And, that's one of the primary things right there. And then you have all of the issues with, the fiscal side of it, with balancing the budget and looking after the taxpayers' best interest. And the list just goes on and on. It's a very big job.
So something that I'm very curious about is what are the boundaries of what a commissioner is allowed to do? So oftentimes, for example, you can go on YouTube and you can watch the commissioner meetings that they hold. And you hear people bring things up sometimes that are just not even within the lane of what a commissioner is allowed to do or not allowed to do. So could you give us a little bit of what those left and right limits are? And maybe you could do it as a contrast with perhaps like a state legislator and how we can identify those differences in the lanes.
Okay, well, when you're comparing it to a state legislator, the county commissioner is a subset of the state government. Okay, and his responsibilities are limited to a specific district in the county where he's elected. As far as the day-to-day operation, there are certain areas of county government that fall directly under the county commissioners through the county manager. And then there's some that don't. For instance, the sheriff is elected by the people. We work with him on funding his department and try to get him what he needs. But ultimately, he answers directly to the people. But our purpose with him is to look at his request for financial support and decide what the people can afford and what they can't. And it's the same way with the register of deeds. Now, other departments within the county work at the direction of the county manager, who answers to the county commissioner. It's a manager council board form of government. And, your roles are limited depending on what area you're in. But at the end of the day, the board gives direction to the county manager and the county manager implements.
Could you maybe expand a little bit on within the county, some of the differences between, like, let's say the commissioners versus the Board of Education, sheriff's office, and let's say public utilities, for example?
Okay. The differences in those, if I understand what you're asking, is the Board of Education is somewhat like the sheriff. They are an elected sovereign body that is the people have elected to represent them in their school needs. The relationship between the county commission and the school board is the school board contacts the county commission and provides its financial needs. And it's particularly limited to school teaching positions that are not funded by the federal or state government, the need for buildings and facilities, which are paid for out of local dollars. So that's where the tie comes between the school board and the county commission. At the end of the day, and it's the same way with the sheriff, at the end of the day, the county commissioners are responsible for how your tax dollars are spent. And I look at it as being my own money and try to be as frugal with it as possible. Because at the end of the day, that's who the money belongs to and who we represent, or the people of the county, and particularly in my case, in the 2nd district. But I also have to work with other commissioners for a common good, because no man can do it by himself. So.
Well, and actually that's a really great segue into kind of some additional questions. So one of the questions that I have is, how will you as a commissioner, if you're elected, determine whether or not you've been an effective leader? When I took over as county chair, I talked about measures of effectiveness a lot for determining whether or not what we're doing is working, so we can adjust course. So what are your measures of effectiveness?
Well, one of the things that I tried to do when I was on the school board was leave everything better than I found. Sometimes that's an easy job, sometimes that's a hard job. But at the end of the day, that's the yardstick that I use. Did I leave the county in a better place? And a lot of that comes from listening to the people. I say a lot of it, the vast majority of it does, because again, you're representing them. I'm to listen to the people and see what the majority of them want and take a position on, and what's best for them.
And when it comes to your decision-making process in regards to budgetary decisions, obviously we have a very rapidly expanding county. The residential housing is getting built up like crazy, and our roads are not wide enough to facilitate a lot of the traffic. There's issues with impact fees and taxes, and how are we going to afford all of these things? So obviously you're going to have a lot of tough decisions to make as a county commissioner. What's your thought process when it comes to the budget and how taxpayer dollars are going to be utilized?
And again, thank you for that, Jesse. One of the things that I did when I was on the school board was I took the budget and I looked at it and said, how much, because our goal then was to funnel every dollar we could to the classroom. Because at the end of the day, the smaller the classroom, the better we are. And I'll have to do the same thing with the county commission, is work with my fellow county commissioners and take every dollar that we can find that's in the budget that we don't necessarily have to have, and redirect it to areas that are a higher priority. Not necessarily lesser important, but today they're a higher priority. And work through those challenges to better serve the public.
So as you talk about the priorities, and where the money goes based on those priorities, something that has become very apparent to me, and I think to most of Americans, is that when COVID-19 hit, everyone's level of risk assessment started significantly differing. So in the context of what we've seen already, with lockdowns, with mask mandates, vax mandates, things like that. Could you explain a little bit what your thought process is on risk mitigation and how you'll make those determinations? Because obviously we have a very large population in terms of age range. There's a very diverse age range. We've got a lot of young folks and a lot of older folks. How do you create a balance so that we're not locking down the younger generation and forcing them to stay in their houses and allowing them to live the American dream?
Well, Jesse, I think at this point, we've learned enough about COVID and it has changed enough today that I think everybody can make their own decision about what level of masking or prevention that they need to take. And I certainly believe with our children that that's more of a parental decision today than a mandate. But it's, we're always looking at the safety. I was a chief of police at one time, and, we're always looking for what's the best move to protect our citizens. But we also have to protect their freedom. Okay. So that reverts back to what I said to start with, is I think that we're at the point, unless some god awful numbers change, we're at the point today where citizens can make their own decision. The mandating of mask wearing, and I think we're beyond that. And it's time to move on. Now, should the numbers change and some other reliable science come forward, naturally we could look at it again. But at this point, based on what we've seen at this point, that's where I'm at.
So something that has been quite concerning to me is that looking at statistics over the course of the COVID pandemic, we've seen suicide rates go through the roof, especially with younger folks. We've seen substance abuse. If my memory is correct, I believe it was 47% increase in sales of alcohol since COVID started. So I guess, the question becomes, if another issue comes up, right? And when COVID first came about, all the information that's being discussed now in commonplace and around the water cooler, it's stuff that was before censored, and we were told by the government and by supposed reliable officials that these are things that we needed to do. So in the event that something new comes up, because obviously it's inevitable that we live in a world where things will change, how do you make your decision-making process off of that when you want reliable data? But we've seen that data that comes from a lot of these organizations and institutions is politically driven.
Well, Jesse, that you're absolutely correct with that, and I think that's an excellent point to bring forward. At the end of the day, the way to make the decisions regarding COVID to me is take the best information that you can obtain that appears to be the most reliable, and then apply common sense. Those knee-jerk reactions that we've got, it's cost us a lot, and it's put our people through a lot. And I think a lot of it was uncalled for. But mental health is an issue. You brought up the part about the suicide. Mental health issues are something we've got to address. We're going to have to work to make our mental health system better. Just that simple. As a deputy sheriff, I was involved in countless involuntary commitments where family members had committed another family member and we had to transport them to the mental health facilities. And it wasn't the best of scenarios then. I think we need to put some attention to that and bring it into the 21st century. As far as the alcohol sales that you brought up, I think you said it had increased 47%. Just on my experience in narcotics and in law enforcement as a whole, and I've not seen any numbers, but I would think that a portion of that is related to mental health issues, and a portion of it was related there. Nobody was working and everybody was home, and so there's a portion of that that's just unrelated to our mental health issues, and people had time to drink and they did. So there's a whole lot of variables there, and I don't pretend to know the answer to every one of them. Getting elected to office doesn't make you an expert in every field overnight, but it gives you the power to find the right answer for your constituents.
As it comes to issues within the county, obviously we were just talking about a few of them. Could you expand a little bit on what you view as some of our biggest challenges that we're facing currently, and some of your proposed solutions as to how you think we can get out of the predicament we find ourselves in?
Okay, well, we have a number of financial issues. I'm assuming that's what you're referring to for the first line here.
Yeah,
We're
whatever you think.
Yeah, we're going to have to look at the budget and see where we can save tax dollars. Okay, take the money that's already flowing to county government and use it more effectively. And until we get in there and go into a work session with my fellow commissioners and look at where we're spending money and where we can move money around, nobody can give you the right answer to that. Okay, the budget is huge, and but we take common sense applications. Like when I was chairman of the Board of Education, we had 109 people when I became chairman working at the central office. We got together with Dr. Fleming when he first became chairman, and Ms. Thompson, who was the director or assistant superintendent over personnel and finance. And when we got done, there was 48 people at the central office. Very few people lost their job. There was a couple elected to retire, but we were able to funnel those dollars back to the classroom where they should have been to start with. Some of it was like the beginning teacher coordinator. Fine people did a fine job. The only problem was there was 4 of them assigned to the central office and not the first beginning teacher at the central office. So we elected to assign each one of those positions at the individual high schools, and they supported the high school and its feeder school, which was a much more practical application. And those are the kinds of common sense adjustments that I bring to the table, and I work with my fellow commissioners to try to realign those dollars. Now, on the liability side, the latest numbers I've heard is we're approximately $300 million behind in school buildings. Okay, with growth comes rooftops with families, and families have children. The current average is like 1.83. The last numbers I heard, like 1.83 children per household that are school-age children. And they're growing every day. Now, we made some strategic purchases of land when I was on the board to build a middle school up in the northwest Harnett, up in the Duncan area, Fuquay, along with some down around Bun Level. And we're going to have them, but it's not enough. We're going to have to look at creating a building fund. And this is just my idea. But say you take a percentage of the budget and put it in that fund, and you don't touch it except to build a building, a school building. We've got some infrastructure issues that we won't know until we get in there and look at it, of maybe some obligations that we may or may not have that need to be followed up on. And you still got to build parks. You've got to deal with animal control and social services. There's some funding over there, and just the list just goes on and on. It's an awesome and terrible responsibility.
Well, and if you could expand a little bit as well into maybe some of your thoughts on economic development. Primarily, what I'm curious about is your thought process as to whether or not, as a county, we need to be focused on trying to bring businesses into the county, or if we need to be focused on empowering those that are already within the county to be able to expand out.
Well, now, Jesse, that is a great question. I've been waiting on that to come up. We need to do both. And I'll explain why if you'll give me just a second. First off, you need to support that mom and pop business. I was talking with a lady today that has an embroidery business in an outbuilding behind her house, and it's a substantial part of her income. And we need to support those businesses because they will grow and move into a bigger facility and eventually employ more people. It's trickle-down economics in reverse, okay? And then you have to search out and find that huge industrial business that wants to come here. Harnett County has all the resources in the world. We have rail access, we have water access. You can't go anywhere in the central part of North Carolina without coming through Harnett County. So we have the road infrastructures. And so we're a great place to come if we can send that message and get it to the major manufacturing, because we must have that commercial development as well.
Well, I appreciate the answer. And, you know, the purpose of this is obviously to get to know who you are and you know,
Sure.
what you're going to do with the authorities that the voters entrust into your hands. So with that said, I'd like to segue into kind of our final section here. And we've got about 9 minutes left, so you can take as much time as you want or as little time as you want.
Okay.
Thomas Jefferson believed and extensively wrote that all citizens should be knowledgeable on politics and encouraged to serve. So my question to you is, you've been involved in politics for a long time. You've been around the county for a long time. You obviously have a lot of experience. I'm curious, what have you done to create and mentor the next generation of leaders? And the follow-up to that is, why do you feel as though you would be the best choice over one of your mentorees?
Okay. Well, the first off, I always encourage people to get involved in the political process. I started, you're going to probably find this sort of funny, but I got started very early in life in politics. Long before you, I'm a little older than you, but long before you were born, there was a United States Senator from here named Jesse Helms. And Jesse had the Kids for Helms organization, which I was a member of. Now, this is going back when I was 13 or 14 years old. And I have been involved in the fringes of politics ever since then. And at one level or another, you know, of course, I went off in the Army for a few years and came back and, you know, that sort of thing. But, you know, what I would recommend to everybody today, and I have this little saying that people ask me all the time, why do you do this? I said, for many, many years, I worked and didn't have time to get involved. And now today has come and we can't afford not to get involved. Okay. Everybody's got to help pull the wagon. I enjoy helping people. I get my best night's sleep when I've done something that's solved a problem for one of my constituents. And, you know, that's why I do it. I now would encourage everybody else to do it. So I don't know if that answers your question in its entirety, but I've tried to anyway.
Yes, I appreciate it. Well, we have a couple minutes left, so if you have any other message you'd like to convey to the people of Harnett County, the floor is yours.
Yeah, here's the thing. You know, I'm a Christian conservative. I believe in our government. I believe in our community. When I say I believe in our government should have a small footprint in your life. You know, I'm not a big regulation person. I think we should get government out of the way, like we talked about earlier about the businesses. Get government out of the way and let business grow. You know, we're going to have to do our part to help things continue on. And it's, you know, I'm glad to be an American, and I'm glad to be here in the 2nd District. I want to help my people. I want to ask them for their vote, because that's a big part of the process. You can't help them if you don't get in office. You'll see me in the community after election time. Okay. I have, this is a huge district, okay, geographically. And I have an advantage over a lot of people. You live in Anderson Creek Club. If you go right back up there to the first cul-de-sac, there's an old mobile home park on the right. That was part of the deal when the sheriff at the time, 30 years ago, hired me, was I had to live in Anderson Creek. I didn't even know where it was at. And I got to know a lot of folks down there. I have a lot of friends on both sides of the river. You know, I go to Anderson Creek on a regular basis. So you won't just see me at election time. Or at, you know, after the election, I'll be in and out. And it's the same way in Irwin and Dunn. It's a little easier because I live a little closer. I do a lot of business in Dunn. But the same thing applies. Same thing in Bun Level. You know, Bun Level is more than just a little narrow strip that you travel through in the 2nd District. And I had the good fortune of being a deputy sheriff and early in my career and worked both of those areas. I know a lot of people, and you know, I'm one of the few folks that gives out my cell number when I call people or on my campaign literature. I want the people in my district to know all you got to do is make one phone call, and I'll do what I can to help you, or I'll explain why I couldn't. But either way, we're going to look after our folks in the second district.
Well, I appreciate your time so much. Before we leave, if you could just quickly let everyone know how they can get a hold of you and find more information about your campaign.
Sure. The best way to get a hold of me is to call me on the phone. Anytime between about 7 o'clock in the morning and 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, I'll answer the phone. And it's 910-237-8657.
Awesome. Well, thank
And
you
if
so
I
much.
don't
Bill.
answer, don't get offended. If sometime within the next couple of hours, quick as I get a second, I'll call you back.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate your time, and good luck to you in the primary, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you doing everything.
And I'm proud to be an American.